So welcome to Vitalpoint Online. Thank you so much for being here today. If you are new, guest watching today, just so good to have you here with us. Welcome. Don't forget to fill out the new here card at vitalpointchurch.com. If you are a regular attender, like Vital Point Church is your home, we're so glad that you're here as well. One of the things that we love to do as a church is we love to together, no matter where we are in our journey of faith, is we love to learn, we love to grow, we love to be able to expand our thinking about faith and life and actually what it means to follow Jesus. We unapologetically want to point you to Jesus. We believe that it is through him that you discover what it means to be fully human. It's through him you begin to discover meaning and purpose, and through him he reconciles you to God the Father. So we unapologetically do that and point you to him, and we're super excited about being able to have this conversation today. Today is actually week 2 in our formation series. And this series is actually based out of a verse in the New Testament written by this guy named the Apostle Paul, found in Galatians chapter 4, verse 19. I just want to read it for you because it'll help us all get some context and direction to where we're headed today. It says, "Oh, my dear children," this is the Apostle Paul writing, "I feel as if I'm going through labor pains for you again, and they will continue until Christ is fully developed in your lives." That word fully developed is this idea of the relationship with Jesus being formed in us, that he desires and longs for. Like, he even describes it as childbirth. And now let's face it, he's a guy, he doesn't know what that actually means and doesn't have a clue what it feels like, but he's describing it in this way where there's this deep longing of having this new life emerge in a relationship with Jesus. So that we look at Jesus' life and relationship with him, and it's formed in us. So last week, we talked about, as we launched into the series, rule of life. So it's not necessarily rules or goals or resolutions. It's this guiding rule as it relates to Jesus and how that relationship with him keeps our lives pointed in the right direction. So in other words, a rule of life helps us from living life on accident. It's actually helping us understand how it filters into every aspect of our lives. Now, today is week 2, and I want to talk about silence and solitude. And you're like, really? Like silence and solitude? Yeah, we're going to go there today because I believe that this is another piece of the formation of the relationship with Jesus that's absolutely essential for all of us. But before we get there, I got to tell you a story. Always got to come off with a good story to start the message. I wanted to go back to Canada Day of this year, just like 11 days ago, July 1. What you may not know about me is that I love to stay fit. I exercise, I work out regularly, I love to do sports and all that kind of stuff. And actually today is my birthday. I turned 51 today, and I'm probably in better shape now than when I was in my 20s. But I just love that. I believe for me, now this is just me, it's part of my spiritual formation is making sure that I take care of the body that God has given to me. So this year, this spring, I took up a new sport, road riding. It's like riding a bicycle on the road, but serious, like with the whole outfit on. Now, I used to mountain bike quite a bit, but this year I decided to make that shift and go to something different, which is road riding, which is amazing. I'm a touch addicted to it, just so you know. But on July 1st, a friend of mine, Pat, and we decided that we were going to go on a really long road ride. I wanted to do 80K. The most I'd ever done to that point was 60. I want to do 80. So we set off early on Canada Day to go for the ride. Now, we didn't get our full 80 in. We got about 72 in. But near the end of the ride, something happened that I can't even believe I'm going to share it with you. At the end of my ride, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling great. I even said to Pat, I feel so good at the end of 70-some kilometers. But then all of a sudden, next thing I knew, I was on the front lawn of my neighbor's yard. I kid you not. I clipped the curb, I flipped over the handlebars, and smashed into the guy's lawn. My shoulder and my head hit first. I couldn't believe it. I was stunned. Now, you need to know, I was super happy that my neighbor is one of those guys that waters his lawn, because when I hit the lawn, it was soft and it was plush. I took a huge divot with my shoulder. There was mud all over my shoulder, and I was so thankful. Now, the neighbor, he came running, and my friend Pat came back around, and I was just lying on the ground, stunned. I couldn't believe what had happened. It was my first road accident, and I was okay, and the bike was okay, which is even better. Now, you might ask, Ron, how in the world did you go over the handlebars of your bike? Like, what in the world? Well, I can tell you right now, I got distracted. So some of you who know me is not maybe surprised by that, but I did. See, as I was riding by, very close to my home, I saw my neighbor's road bike leaning against the car. And as I rode by, I was looking at the bike. And as I looked at the bike, I was trying to make out what the make of the bike was. And I veered over and I clipped the curb and my pedal hit it. And I went up and over and landed on the lawn. Now, you're like, Ron, what does this have to do with anything? Well, here it is. The reality is that for many of us, our lives are filled with distractions. Our lives are filled with constant distractions. And sometimes they're unintentional because there's things in our lives that are just coming our way. But there's other times we actually use the distractions as excuses. We use these distractions to keep us from being present in the moment. Sometimes we use them to keep us from, maybe to dull the hum in the background of our lives and our souls. We just want it to go away, so we use distractions. Like we fill up our lives with social media, or we binge watch Netflix, and we try to fill it in with all kinds of distractions because we don't want to deal with what is going on in our lives. It's something that's just become a norm for many of us. One of the things that struck me recently as I've been thinking about distractions is this, and this is over the last few months in this season of isolation and physical distancing. What I've discovered is this, that those who manage the distractions in their lives are far more aware of the direction of their lives. See, because sometimes the distractions are just there and we just kind of accept them as just normal. It's like, for example, go with me on this, and I've been on a bit of a kick on social media and phones and everything, so just run with me on this. I know it's like, Ron, it's like a pet peeve, just get over it, but I just got to go with it. Think about this for a minute. Right now, when you go to a store, you have to wait in line, right? Outside the store, taped 6 feet apart. What do most of us do? Just take a look down the line, and you'll see most of us are on our phones. Most of us are scrolling, like our thumbs are going like this, right? It's just part of what we do. The other day, I was standing in the line going into a store, and I thought to myself, no, I'm not going to do this. So I stood literally with my arms crossed, with my phone in my pocket, and I thought, I'm just going to try and see what happens and what it means to be not distracted by my phone. We see this all the time. You drive by a playground, or you drive by a place where kids are playing. You're not allowed at playgrounds these days, but you know what I mean. You see parents on their phones with their kids, or at a soccer game or baseball game or whatever it is. We have become consumed with distractions. See, one of the things that I believe that's important for us to understand is that distractions don't have to be it doesn't have to be normal. We can actually break free from the distractions. See, you may not think about Jesus like this, but Jesus had distractions in his life. He had many distractions. When Jesus came on the scene at about 30 years old, his life was propelled into the public eye when he walked on earth. And what ended up happening was crowds would gather around him. People would be demanding his time. People were bringing his kids to them, sick people, and it was all around him. Jesus was filled with distractions, but you know one of the things that Jesus countered the distractions with was the practice of silence and solitude. The practice of silence and solitude. It's something that we don't think a lot about, or maybe if we do, we just go, oh, I can't make it happen. I can't do that. My life is, and we fill in the blank. But if we truly want our lives to be formed by a relationship with Jesus, back to the fourth thing, if we want our lives to be fully developed or formed in relationship, then what we do is we take on the patterns and the habits and the practices that Jesus had, and when we're in relationship with him, they are formed in us. So that means this: we must consider what it means to live in silence and solitude, those moments and those times where we set aside. See, there's these four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They are the books that are capturing the life of Jesus. You want to know the life of Jesus? You want to know what God's like? You read these stories, and it's revealed to us. Luke, he wrote this one fascinating little verse that kind of speaks to this idea of solitude and silence. It's found in Luke chapter 5, verse 16. Let me just read it for you. It's like dropped in a bunch of other things. It's just kind of this random little verse that's dropped in. It says this, "But Jesus often withdrew to the wilderness for prayer." Like, before this, it's describing of all the demands that people want from him. It's describing all these things that people are asking of him. But Luke, for whatever reason, chose to drop this tiny little verse in to help us understand a rhythm and pattern of Jesus. See, the word wilderness literally means lonely place, desert place, the place of being alone, quiet place, distraction-free. Distraction-free. Like, to realize that Jesus, the Son of God, God in the flesh, would take those moments and times to go to a place of solitude and silence, because he recognized that if he didn't pattern these things in his life, then the distractions would eventually overtake his life, and not only from an external perspective, but an internal perspective. And so what you begin to realize is that Jesus formed a certain pattern of disengaging. I want you to think about that for a minute. We so often think that the formation of our faith is in all the things that we do. Like, I got to read my Bible more. I've got to, I've got to, serve more. I've got to connect with more people. I got to be busy doing these things. And there's certain pieces of that are true. It's part of how we're wired up and what faith looks like. But there's also this spiritual discipline and this practice of disengaging, of actually getting to the place where you go to the wilderness in silence and solitude, for not only the external distractions to be removed, but the internal. Like, what did Jesus do? When Jesus went into the place of wilderness, what did he do? He said he went there for prayer. It means that he actually created the space to get away, to listen to God, his heavenly Father. It wasn't just about Jesus doing all the talking. It was about this place where he was able to absorb the presence of God the Father. So when I speak about silence and solitude, what I'm talking about is getting alone with yourself and with God. So silence and solitude is not like sitting at your favorite coffee shop with a latte watching people, as much fun as that is. That's not silence and solitude. Silence and solitude is not sitting at home with your earbuds in, listening to music. It's not sitting with a book. It's not even sitting necessarily with your Bible. It is the complete removal of everything in our lives to simply sit in the space where God meets us. See, when you begin to realize the formation of a life of Jesus, you begin to look at Jesus' life from a different perspective, and you realize that if Jesus had to do this, then how much more should I do this? Now, what happens when we do it? What happens when we step into this silence and solitude, when we remove the distractions? And let me just say this. I recognize I'm saying this, and some of you are listening to me say this, and you're like, Ron, you have no idea what my life is like. You're like, I've got like kids running around all the time. My roommates are always around. You don't understand. I have very little space left in my life, and you're having all these excuses, and it's true. I get it. And you're looking at my life. Probably some of you who know me. I'm an empty nester. My wife and I don't have kids at home. They're married and moved on. I've only got one grandkid, so I'm not super busy with her. But I get it. But we're kind of just give and take here for a few seconds, because I'm acknowledging the fact that what I'm talking about can be very difficult, but it's necessary. And here's the reason why. It's necessary for two specific reasons. When we practice disengaging from all the external things, the distractions, what happens is this: we gain direction from God and we find adjustments from God. So the two words are direction and adjustment. Is that fair? Let's talk about these two things for a minute. So direction. I want to talk about this because this is really powerful. Jesus said this about himself in one of the other Gospels called John. And Jesus described himself like this. I'll read these two verses for you. John chapter 5, verse 19. He said, I tell you the truth, the Son, so this is referring to himself, can do nothing by himself. He does only what he sees the Father doing. Whatever the Father does, the Son does also. So that's John chapter 5, verse 19. Write it down if you have to and look at it later. John 8:28 says this, I do nothing on my own, but say only what the Father has taught me. So when you think about this idea of seeking the direction of God, as Jesus did, means that Jesus only did what he saw and heard the Heavenly Father doing. So Jesus gained direction for his life. So from moving from town to town, when he would interact with people, he only was able to do those things from what he saw the Father doing. So it means this: when we are in that pocket, we were in silence and solitude, it means this, that we are literally absorbing the presence of God so that we can find direction for our lives. How many of us seek the direction of God for our lives? It could be what school to apply to and go to in the fall. It could be, who you're going to marry. Who should you date? What job should you do? I mean, they're endless, right? Should I buy the blue car or the red car? Just to be honest, God doesn't really care what color it is, just so you know. But we just kind of enter in. We go, But what if we just actually did something different? What if we actually created the time of silence and solitude to absorb the presence of God like Jesus did, and then out of that we begin to live our lives much differently? Because when we are in silence and solitude, our hearts begin to pattern after the heart of God, which ultimately fulfills what? The direction of God in our lives. That's powerful. That's life-changing for some of us. See, we're looking for a sign to drop out of the sky. We're looking for, all these big, elaborate things for God to give us direction, when all he simply says is, will you just be with me? Will you just be silent? Will you just be still enough? Will you be in solitude with me? Will you find that desert place, that wilderness place, that shed or that closet or whatever? And we enter into that time. I mean, if Jesus did this, hello, shouldn't we consider doing this? I know that in my own life, especially in the last few months, and some of the things that I've been navigating through for my own personal world and for our church, for Vitalpoint, there are moments where I've sat in silence and solitude, just waiting to see and feel and sense the presence of God. And as I absorb those moments, I move out, find that the choices and decisions will line up with him, because I'm seeking direction. So what are you seeking direction for? Fill in that blank, whatever it is. Will you take time of silence and solitude? But it's not only that, okay? It's also about adjustments. Silence and solitude is getting on the table and allowing God to make his adjustments. Let me share something with you. I want to just open up to you for just a second. So I have a friend, his name is Sean. His name's Sean Martin, and he's my chiropractor. He's part of Vitalpoint Church, and this is not a paid commercial for Sean Martin whatsoever, but I go see Sean weekly. He's very generous, and I just go and see him. In our season of shutdown, Sean and I connected every day. We talked on FaceTime, we text, we called each other, and we just stayed connected. And we were learning from each other as he was navigating through some of his own personal things, and it was just amazing. The two of us just had incredible conversations. In one of our FaceTime conversations, I had a moment where I realized what God was saying to us. I said to him, it's almost like this season, God is asking us to surrender to him so that he can make the adjustments to our lives. See, when I go to see Sean, he makes adjustments. And there are times when the adjustment goes well, And there's times where it doesn't. And when it doesn't, it has nothing to do with Sean. It has everything to do with me. That even though I'm on that table, for whatever reason, I don't find myself surrendering to the adjustment. And he'll say to me, I think you need to come back in a few days. See, silence and solitude is the place where we find ourselves in surrender to God. And we allow ourselves to be adjusted by him. See, in silence and solitude, what begins to happen is things come to the surface of our lives. All the good things, like the things that you're thankful for, the gratitude things, the love and the expression of joy. And these things can rise to the surface in our solitude and silence. But there's also those things that are unpleasant that rise to the surface. The things that maybe we've swept under the rug, the things that we've chosen to deny or turn a blind eye to. And it's in these moments where God, by his Spirit, begins to make the unpleasant adjustments. He begins to kind of adjust us in a way to bring us into a fuller expression of who Jesus is in us. Now, if you're not a follower of Jesus, you need to know that when you cross that line of faith and you enter into a relationship with him, what happens is that you become more like him. Over time, there's adjustments and transformation, and it's a beautiful picture that begins to emerge. But we must allow God, in relationship with Jesus, by his Spirit, to make those adjustments. What is it that he needs to do that brings about the things that we are ignoring? Anger issues. Or maybe it's an addiction pattern, or maybe it's selfishness, or maybe it's your desire to be liked by people on social media, or maybe it's prejudice, or there's prejudice or racism that we've been talking so much about these days. Maybe it's that, where God, you're on the table in the silence and solitude, and he's just kind of doing subtle adjustments by his Spirit. See, I find it so amazing that God, the creator of the universe, sent his Son into this world so that we can be made right with him, so that we can be in relationship with him, but then enter into the process of being formed into the image of his Son, Jesus. Not that you become weird, not that you become odd, but that you become something beautiful. That in the formation of your relationship with Jesus, it means that love and joy and peace, meaning and purpose and fulfillment will be found in him and not on all these other things. See, when we're distracted, when we continually allow the distraction to our lives, we miss what it means in the moment with God. So my question for us is this: what do you do with this, right? What is my action step, Ron? What do I do? Well, first of all, you need to know that if you choose to put this pattern in place, it may not be pleasant. It's actually going to be very difficult. It could create some anxiety. It might create some tension inside of you. But if we're prepared and we're willing to enter into that space, then we'll be able to say what the psalmist David wrote in Psalm 139, verse 23. He says, "Search me, O God," because in those moments, in the silence and solitude with direction and adjustments, we say, "Search me and know me." So here's what I want you to consider doing. If you choose to do this, if you so choose to accept this mission, here's what I would ask you to consider doing is this. Set aside 5 minutes a day, or max 10 minutes a day. If you need to go to bed earlier and get up earlier so that, before the kids, whatever, just do that. Or, go somewhere quiet where your roommates aren't around or whatever. Just take 5-10 minutes and remove everything. Maybe it's an hour a week. Maybe it's you designate an hour a week, hour in a 7 period, and you just go in silence and solitude. Or maybe if you get really brave, you're going to set a whole day once every few months and just enter in and just be with you and God. See, one of the things I'm convinced of as I consider this idea of silence and solitude is that it is possible that if you choose to step into this ancient practice, it might keep you from going over the handlebars. It might keep you from going over the handlebars of your life. And it will open up your heart and your soul and your mind in a way where you begin to hear the whispers of God's direction and the whispers of his adjustments. Jesus practiced silence and solitude. What would it look like for you, and what would it look like for me if we so choose to step into this space?